All right, man, peace. So, brothers, superstar welterweight champion Mr. Terrence Crawford has a fight coming up this weekend against some dude named Mean Machine. But that's a part of the problem, because every time I start to speak about Mr. Terrence Crawford, many of his fanboys get upset, and they don't quite realize that I'm not insulting or trying to diminish the accomplishments of Terrence. When I state that he does not have a great resume, it's just a statement of fact. That's all it is. And just the fact that I have him ranked number 2 on my pound-for-pound list should show those who have an understanding that his exemplary skills are able to transcend his weak resume. I had a couple of dudes trying to go back and forth with me, attempting to gainsay. Well, if you claim that Terrence Crawford has not fought anybody, why do you have him that high on your pound-for-pound list? Because at the end of the day, there's a difference between a championship level fighter and a name recognition championship level fighter. And what I mean by that is there are champions all over the sport of boxing, but there are certain fighters who are marketable. You can market the fight or promote the fight just on their name. Name recognition matters a lot, because what that entails is that not only is that fighter great, but that they're singularly great. They actually exude an energy that makes people want to watch them fight. And as of right now, there are no fighters of that caliber associated with Top Rank, at least in the welterweight division. He's supposed to know that already. When I say he, I'm talking about Terrence Crawford. If he truly is sincere in his claims that he wants to take over the welterweight division, that's what he has always claimed, that he wants to be the undisputed welterweight champion, just like he was the undisputed junior welterweight champion. Well, that should mean what? When your contract came to an end, you're supposed to go to the environment where there are the most welterweight champions. That is the PBC. So that's the conundrum for those of us who are trying to figure out exactly what the end game is of Mr. Terrence Crawford, unless he's just hoping and waiting that once the smoke clears on the PBC side, some fighter with all 3 belts is going to call him out and he'll be able to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. That's what I think his end game must be. But at the end of the day, just getting back to his skill set is immaculate. I would probably have him even Steven with Lomachenko, but as I always state in all these videos, Lomachenko just has a far greater resume than him, despite fighting maybe 1/3 of the fights that Terrence Crawford has fought. How many fights does Bud Crawford have right now? 33, 34? How many fights does Lomachenko have right now? 13, 14? So a little bit over 1/3 of the fights. And there are far more name recognition fights on Lomachenko's side. A lot of cats say, well, this dude had a year layoff and this person met him at a catch weight. At the end of the day, going into the fight, everyone viewed the Lomachenko versus Nicholas Walters fight, or the Lomachenko-Linares fight, or the Lomachenko-Rigondeaux fight as a barn burner, as a clash of the titans. It's not his fault that he was able to nullify what those fighters did, and in a way that lets you understand that even at their best, they were not going to beat him. And no, let me not forget Mr. Gary Russell Jr. All these fighters that I just named would have been on most boxing aficionados' pound-for-pound list. Linares, of course, not in the top 10, but someone like a Linares would have probably been in the top 30 pound-for-pound. At his peak, Nicholas Walters, Gary Russell would have been on the pound-for-pound list for those of us who understand the eye test. He has great hand speed, great vision in the ring, foot placement, things of that nature. Now, Nicholas Walters was a bit limited. He was a great power puncher, a great pressure fighter for his weight class at the time. There were some issues with him regarding Bob Arum, and that's why he took a long period off. Also, I believe he got married, things of that nature. At the end of the day, you're a professional fighter. You're supposed to show up and compete. They failed to do so. Lomachenko did his job. Just getting back to Mr. Terrence Crawford, I see 2 fighters on his resume that stand out, that being Gamboa, who himself had taken a year off, and also Postal, which I've always stated is by far his most impressive victory. So Terrence Crawford still has a lot to prove in my view, and the brother's 33 years old. He's at the very end of his physical prime right now, so I don't know what he's really waiting on. That's why I state it does not make sense to me that he signed back with Top Rank. But just getting back to the point, he's going to answer some questions from Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman, and they're going to ask him some of the tough questions that people want to hear answered. So, of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
We're joined by my #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world and Hall of Famer. Got to call you a Hall of Famer now? Teddy Atlas.
Our number one pound for pound.
Our number one pound for
Yes.
pound. There it is.
When you say our, you're talking about ESPN. Because you have to push and promote Terrence Bud Crawford as much as possible because you guys don't really have anybody else other than him and Tyson Fury.
Welcome, guys. You have a fight coming up Madison Square Garden this Saturday against your number one contender. How do you feel about fighting at Madison Square Garden?
Max Kellerman, why did you not at least name the fighter that he's fighting? Is it because the fighter has no name? Some dude named Mean Machine. I said, what kind of bullshit is this, Terrence? God damn.
I feel great to be back here for my second consecutive fight. And I'm really willing to go out there and show the world why I feel like I'm the best fighter in the world right now.
Can you do...
Can't do that against Mean Machine. You got to do that on the PBC side. And I hear a lot of cats trying to argue for Terrence Crawford while using an argument that can be used against Terrence Crawford. They claim that fighters are ducking Terrence Crawford. Well, can't you say that Terrence Crawford is ducking the PBC fighters when he decided to sign back with Top Rank, knowing where all the competition is at? Oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. If fighters really want to fight, they'll fight. Look at back in 1885 when Shoeless Joe Gans fought Chocolate Willie Brown for the welterweight championship, and they fought 45 rounds in 145-degree temperature. You don't know nothing about boxing. I love when them type dudes jump in the comments. They're always going back to the 1880s and the 1910s and shit. Fights they never even saw with their own eyes, but they want to act like they just know everything about pugilism. Terrence Bud Crawford, it would have behooved him had he utilized some sense of business acumen, but I believe that is part of his problem. He's good with the $2 million or $3 million checks that he's getting from Top Rank. As long as it's enough to keep his house paid for and to fund his fishing trips, he has no problem with it. But name me one fighter who at the end of his tenure with Top Rank did not have severe complaints about the money. And I hope that Terrence Crawford does not end up that way, because if he does, his fans are not going to have anything to say. And as usual with fans, they have a big game to talk when their fighter or when their favorite athlete is at his peak. But when they're broke and starting to complain, none of these fans are going to have shit to say. You never hear about anyone on the PB side having money problems.
Against a guy like Kavaliauskas, Mean Machine, who's undefeated, but...
Oh, good, we got a name. And good for you, Max Kellerman, for being able to pronounce that name.
Was kind of lucky to draw against Ray Robinson. I don't mean Sugar Ray Robinson, in his last fight. Can you really demonstrate something new, or that you are, in fact...
Let me say this also. Terrence Crawford has a Ray Robinson-esque style. I would not quite call him Ray Robinson because he's not as fast, but that was a whole different era. Certain cats got upset with me when I stated that Gervonta Tank Davis's style, to me, was reminiscent of Ray Robinson's style. I say that because of the hand speed and the boxing and punching, and the fact that Gervonta actually can move around the ring and can fight going backwards to a degree, very similar to Ray Robinson, and he punches with murderous intent. I had cats say, no, he's more like a Mike Tyson. Well, Mike Tyson was not a fighter who could fight going backwards. That's not really what he did. Terrence Bud Crawford is also on that Ray Robinson tree of being a boxer-puncher. I just want to see him in the ring with better competition. I don't know what the excuse is going to be if Sean Porter calls him out. I stated this in the aftermath video that I did for the Errol Spence versus Sean Porter fight, that it would behoove Sean Porter to call out Terrence Crawford because they both have something that the other would want. Terrence Crawford will want to prove that he can make fights with a PBC fighter. Of course, if he can make that fight with Sean Porter, that would put even more pressure on Errol Spence once Errol Spence comes back to make the fight with Terrence Crawford as soon as possible. It also would give Sean Porter a fighter that he can get into the ring with who has a belt. Sean Porter claims that he wants to have the championship belt. I've had so many cats say, well, those guys are friends, they're not going to fight. I don't want to hear none of that bullshit. Because we know for a fact, if Errol Spence was friends with Terrence Crawford, people would not accept that excuse. So I want to see Terrence Crawford and Sean Porter, assuming that Terrence Crawford will win this fight on Saturday night. I want to see him call out Sean Porter and see what the PBC side says about it.
Best against a guy like that?
Well, this guy never been hurt to the point where he's been dropped before in his career.
Right, but what does that really mean?
Or as an amateur. He's a two-time Olympian. So I'm looking to go out there and do something that nobody ever done before to him.
Well, brother, is this an amateur tournament that I don't know about? Are you competing in the Olympics, or is this a professional prize fight? Why are you telling me about how successful he was in the Olympics?
I'm not questioning the validity of your next opponent. Please don't get me wrong.
Yes, you are.
But considering how great you are and how hungry you are all at the same time, I want to know, how much are you salivating for? We wish Errol Spence Jr. well, wish he gets back healthy. Whether it's the Keith Thurmans, it's the Pacquiaos, just some of the bigger names in the division.
Well, he's not going to get the Pacquiao fight. If Pacquiao was going to fight him, they would have fought over at the top-ranked side. At the end of the day, there are rumors going back and forth over who ducked who. It's pretty obvious that Pacquiao big-timed him, and also that Bob Arum most likely did not want to make that fight. And at least if he did, Pacquiao understood that Arum was trying to cash him out, and he went over to the PBC side because Pacquiao is trying to get the Floyd Mayweather rematch. That's where his concern is at. And that's what I stated in the aftermath video that I did for Pacquiao's fight with Keith Thurman. That's really the only reason why Pacquiao is still fighting right now. I believe that Al Heyman promised Floyd Mayweather to Manny Pacquiao as long as he fought a couple of fighters on the PBC stable or in the PBC stable. Pacquiao agreed, and eventually that fight is still going to happen, at least in my view. I've been saying that for the longest time. They did the orange hood ritual at one of the LA Clipper games. Floyd Mayweather did. So I do believe that that was the official green light for that fight to eventually happen. And supposedly Floyd Mayweather is coming back to fight another mixed martial artist and then Pacquiao. Supposedly that is allegedly going to be the two fighters that he's going to face. But just getting back to Mr. Terrence Crawford, as you know, in regards to who he possibly could fight, I don't see Keith Thurman choosing to fight him. Keith is going to come down with some other injury before he fights Terrence Crawford, and that's okay because Keith does not even have a belt anymore. Terrence should be focusing on Shawn Porter.
You can have a greater spotlight put on you. How bad do you want that? How long do you anticipate you're going to have to wait before you get those fights?
I don't know. I've been calling for those fights for years.
Well, bro, here's the problem. Once again, you claim that you've been calling for those fights for years. A couple of years ago, if you really wanted those fights, you could have went over to the PBC side like Manny Pacquiao did.
The Pacquiao fight. I've been calling for Pacquiao since 2015. That fight didn't happen, so...
Yeah, it's kind of difficult for the Manny Pacquiao fight to happen in 2015 when he fought Floyd Mayweather for $150 million. I'm not quite sure, brother, if you understand this, but it's called prize fighting. You fight for a prize.
No, there's nothing I can really do to get those fighters in the ring with me.
Sure there is. You could have went to the PBC.
Years ago, Marvin Hagler was known as the best switch hitter in sports since, Mickey Mantle, or, at least
Although
Eddie Murray or someone.
Switch that much.
He's a southpaw.
He did it for the Leonard fight.
But he switched earlier than the Leonard fight. But anyway, this guy might be the best switch hitter I've ever seen. What do you think, Mick?
Right, but does Terrence truly switch hit, meaning go back and forth, orthodox to southpaw and back? Or does he come out orthodox and then normally around rounds 2 or 3 change to southpaw and then never switch back? Like, it's not like he goes back and forth.
Him special as a fighter.
Him and Andre Ward, to be fair about it. Andre Ward's pretty good. He could switch around pretty good too. And
I've also seen Roy Jones and Floyd Mayweather do a spectacular job of turning southpaw. I believe that Floyd went southpaw in the Sharmba Mitchell fight. Those guys are so talented. It's just that sometimes they don't feel like playing around too much. But I saw Floyd turn southpaw. Once again, I believe it was against Sharmba. And Roy Jones also turned southpaw a couple of times, but I cannot remember who it was against.
Had that great amateur background, both of them. Andre, of course, won the gold medal, but he's probably the best switch hitter I've ever seen.
What do you think makes him special as a fighter?
His instincts. He's the most instinctual fighter I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, he's up there. Roberto Duran also is up there. Salvador Sanchez, to me, might be the most instinctual fighter that I've ever seen, but Terrence is up there as well. And, of course, the great Floyd Mayweather. But if I were to say a fighter that I thought was the most instinctual that I've ever seen, I'll probably say Salvador Sanchez.
Got an innate ability to just, like Customano, my mentor, used to say, and I think he was the best boxing guy ever, but that's obviously my prejudice. But he used to say, the great ones make it up as they do it. They just create it as they do it, kind of like a Jimi Hendrix on the guitar, playing it upside down. You know, or a Bobby Fischer looking at a chessboard, seeing moves that nobody else sees. Or Louis Armstrong hitting notes that weren't even invented.
And let me also not forget Mr. Roy Jones Jr. as well. That dude used to throw quadruple and quintuple. He used to throw quadruple and quintuple left hooks at dudes, man. Roy Jones was incredible.
And yeah, this man does that. He hits his own notes. He creates it as he does it. He's got the greatest instincts I've ever seen.
My next question is for the
greatest instincts you've ever seen.
Ever.
Wow.
Well, you might as well go full hyperbole because he is your A-class fighter on ESPN. The only real A-class fighter that you have other than Tyson Fury. Well, let me also say they have Lomachenko as well, but Lomachenko, he can't sell anything. Terrence Crawford is a guy that they have to try to sell. Lomachenko can't speak any English, so they can't even really market him.
My next question is for the both of you. When I think about him, Teddy, I'll ask you this question. Because I love mega fights. As much as I'm associated with basketball and love basketball, I don't think there's anything greater than a major fight.
Agreed.
Who would you love to see him against most? And who would you love to go against most, ideally?
In this next fight, I would love to see Terrence Crawford against Shawn Porter. If he were to defeat Shawn Porter, that to me would be a proclamation to the rest of the welterweight division, especially if he were to do so in impressive fashion. If he were to be the first fighter to stop Shawn Porter, that would make people's perceptions of a prospective fight between him and Errol Spence totally change. And I mean, really at this point, Terrence will be the betting favorite in a fight against Errol Spence, especially in light of some of the issues that Errol had in his fight against Shawn Porter because he dumped his style down, and also because of the seeming lack of discipline that Errol seems to have, that Terrence most likely does not have. As of right now, I believe that Terrence Crawford would be a betting favorite if he were to get into the ring right now with a fully healthy Errol Spence. But if he got into the ring with Shawn Porter and were able to stop him, which in my view should be his next fight after this one, assuming he wins this fight coming up this Saturday night, that would probably be the greatest business move of his career.
Against Spence. You know, I mean, I hope Spence comes back and he's 100%. You know, God willing, he will. And mentally, too, because after an accident like that where you see your life pass in front of you, and his life pass in front of him when you flip a car going like that, you hope that mentally, emotionally, he can come back from that, not just physically. But I would like to see 100%.
I would pretty much agree with the first three names on this list.
Spence against 100% Crawford. I'd love to see that because that would be size, strength, will against skill, instincts, and he's got some will too.
Ooh, your ideal opponent?
Whoever everybody else want me to fight, I'm taking them all.
Terrence, let's be for real, bro. You're going to fight whoever Bob Arum tells you to fight. Just say that. At least Manny Pacquiao was honest back 10 years ago. When everyone wanted him to fight Floyd Mayweather, he would say, I got to fight. You got to talk to my promoter. At least he was honest about it. Terrence needs to stop trying to act like he's gunning for these dudes over on the PBC side. At the end of the day, he's going to fight whoever Bob Arum tells him to fight.
I don't handpick them. I just fight them.
See that?
Yeah, in other words, you're going to fight whoever your promoter tells you to fight.
Cocky, man, because I mean that's why that level of confidence is what is when you talk about instincts. That's usually a fighter who's on top will survey the landscape and say that guy's different. You know, I'm going to have to prove it against that guy. You don't see anyone out there like that? You think you're on your own level? What?
He knows that he's going to have to beat Errol Spence to be considered the best welterweight. He knows that already. Terrence believes that he can defeat Errol Spence. The problem with Terrence is that he just does not comprehend the boxing business. He only understands the boxing sport. If he comprehended the boxing business, he would have known that it would have been a no-lose situation for him to go to the PBC. He would have made more money, been granted greater security for himself and his family for their future, and he would have gotten to get into the ring with the big names that he needs to get into the ring with in order to validate his presence in the welterweight division.
There's people out there like that, but my thing is, once we fight and they don't amount to the expectations that everybody put them on, then it's like oh man, that fight wasn't all what I thought it would be.
Right, but brother, no disrespect. The only fighter that you've been in the ring with that people actually thought would be competitive with you was Postal. And you did an incredible job in that fight. That was a whitewash. That's how you know. Once again, I have no problem saying that Terrence Crawford, probably skill-wise, you could put him number one and people who understand what they're watching not be incredulous. But when I look at his resume, I just can't. Yes, he was able to clear out the 140-pound division, but does anybody remember who he defeated to get those belts? If you were to put a gun in somebody's head and say, name the 4 fighters that Terrence Crawford beat to get the belts at 140 pounds, there'd be a lot of people get their damn head blown off. Or maybe now that I think of it, it was just 3 fighters, because I think that he beat 3 fighters for the 4 belts. I remember he stopped the African Ndango with the left hook to the body. And Postal he got a belt from. And the third guy I'm trying to remember, I think it was Delorme. But I know one of those belts was vacant. At the end of the day, if you asked any of even his most ardent fans, if they could name the guys that he beat to get the 140-pound belts, I promise you they're not going to know. So the 147-pound weight class has named fighters, and that's my point. There are championship-level fighters, and there are named fighters. As nice a boxer as Victor Postal is, he's nowhere near on the recognition status of a Keith Thurman or Sean Porter or an Errol Spence or Danny Garcia. Those guys are all on the PBC side. Hell, Manny Pacquiao's on the PBC side. If he ever dreamed of fighting Floyd Mayweather, if he comes back, is going to be on that side. Well, really, Floyd Mayweather, he's his own entity. But Terrence has to get his shit together when it comes to the business acumen aspect of boxing.
Quote recently where you talked about you were you've proven more than the other welterweights, like in the PBC, right? In various weight classes. But at 147 pounds, because they get to fight each other, we've seen Spence and Porter, and even though everyone thought, oh, Spence is going to beat Porter up in a good fight, no, it didn't happen that way. Like, until you actually fight the guys, we don't know, we just suspect.
Thank you, sir. And Max Kellerman works for ESPN. He's basically just trying to convey the same sentiment as I am.
So what does it mean to you to not have those fights available yet at 47?
That means that he will never be validated until he fights those guys. Bottom line, I don't care how great he is when it comes to the eye test. I don't care about his skill set. I don't care about how much dog he has in him. He has to fight those dudes.
That's the thing, you know, what I tell people. At 47, yeah, you can say that I haven't proven myself.
Thank you, sir. At least you admit it.
The point where everybody like, all right, well, he's the #1 guy in the division. But as a whole, my whole career, me moving up 2 different weight classes and becoming world champion at 147, my first fight at 147, I feel...
Against Jeff Horn, brother? Jeff Horn. Knock it off.
I know I've proven more in my career than any of those fighters have. None of those fighters have moving up in weight in multiple championships.
That's because they're all real welterweights. That's part of your test. You're considered a small welterweight. I don't necessarily consider you that because you've been at the weight class now for going on 2 years. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to prove that when you get into the ring with a fighter like a Sean Porter and he tries to bulldoze you, that you can sustain. Because we saw Errol Spence do it. We saw Keith Thurman do it. Now we have to find out if you can do it. And no disrespect, nobody's going to care what you did at 135 or 140 when it comes to the 147-pound weight class. When you go to the 5th grade, the teacher don't care about how well you scored on the test in the 3rd and the 4th grade. You have to prove it to her again.
2-time lineal champion, undisputed champion, fighter of the year, ESPN.
That's why you're #1 pound for pound.
In other words, Max Kellerman is letting him know the same thing that I just said. All of those accolades are why people consider you to be such a great fighter. That's why they rank you so high on the pound-for-pound list. But that has nothing to do with you getting verified and validated. Your credibility at welterweight is still lacking.
On and on. That's what I mean when I say I didn't prove more in my career.
Well, listen, he's #1 in the world. You're #1 pound for pound. I don't think anybody would question that. But forgive me for being a little
Stop lying, Stephen A. Smith. We just saw a chart that states that ESPN ranks Lomachenko above him. And I believe that you yourself have even stated that you rank Lomachenko above him. So knock it off.
Make it here, people, because I'm going to bring up this name. Now, he hasn't fought. Max was talking to me about him the other day, said Stephen A., he ain't trying to fight nobody but UFC fighters and stuff like that. I said, no. Floyd Money Mayweather did go on social media and announce that he would be coming out of retirement in 2020.
Floyd's going to fight.
That's why I'm going to ask him. Now, I know what your answer was, but he's... excuse me.
These type of dumb questions are what I'm talking about. There are so many irrelevant questions that get asked to these fighters, and it's really just an excuse to mention Floyd Mayweather's name because Floyd Mayweather's name literally generates money. Literally generates money. Manny Pacquiao understood that for 5 years. He would utilize Floyd Mayweather's name as well as Bob Arum because they understood that that brought attention to Pacquiao. Now they're trying to do the same thing with Terrence Crawford because, no disrespect, the brother's name does not generate money. And they wish that Terrence Crawford could be the businessman that a Floyd Mayweather was. Because ESPN needs it. They need athletes who can sell themselves, especially through the boxing world. They've made a big investment in the boxing world. But Stephen A. Smith, he knows what the hell he's doing. He knows damn well Floyd Mayweather ain't fighting no damn Terrence Crawford. Number one, Terrence Crawford works with Bob Arum, and Floyd does not work with Bob Arum. In order for Manny Pacquiao to get the fight made with Floyd Mayweather, he had to negotiate it himself and pretty much cut Bob Arum out of the negotiation aspect. We all know that Bob got his money, but he got the money to be quiet and go sit in the corner. Terrence is not going to do that. He doesn't have the wherewithal to do that. So just to get back to the point, Floyd is not going to fight no damn Terrence Crawford any more than Manny Pacquiao trying to fight Errol Spence or someone along those lines. Manny Pacquiao is trying to get back in the ring with Floyd so that he can ride off into the sunset. And I have no problem with that. Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, they've paid their debt to the boxing world.
That's why I was going to ask him, and I was going to ask him, do you think that Floyd Money Mayweather would come out of retirement, not the first fight of it, but you think he'll come out of retirement and fight fighters like yourself? Do you believe he will? Do you believe he will?
No, because, is that quick enough? Because Floyd is a tremendous fighter in his time.
Right.
In other words, he's too old.
And he doesn't need me to say that. And a tremendous defensive fighter.
No, just a tremendous fighter. Knock it off with the tremendous defensive fighter bullshit. He's a tremendous fighter.
But he's also been a great manager. A real smart manager. A guy that's a great handicapper. A great matchmaker. He picks his spots really well.
This is more the slick talk. Floyd Mayweather, he cherry-picked his fights. If you go through Floyd Mayweather's roster, his resume, he's fought the most world champions of any fighter ever. That's why people were so shocked when BoxRec evaluated all the great champions in history and they picked Floyd Mayweather as the greatest fighter of all time. You know why they did that? Because when you put Floyd Mayweather's resume against every other fighter's resume in history, you have to erase the narrative and the bullshit and the agendas, and you just evaluate, and you see Floyd Mayweather against another champion and another champion and another champion, not taking fights where he's, just a showcase fight. Once Floyd fought, I believe it was Zab Judah, I'm not quite sure if he ever had another showcase fight other than Juan Manuel Marquez, and then his last real fight against Andre Berto. And both of those fighters were championship caliber. So that's why Floyd Mayweather was evaluated as the number one fighter of all time. Also, he has the number one connect percentage offensively and the lowest connect percentage defensively. So when we take away a lot of the bullshit narratives, it's easy to see why Floyd Mayweather was evaluated as the best fighter of all time.
Sometimes people think
what are you trying to say?
He's not going to pick this spot.
Okay, and you believe that? You don't believe that he would pick you?
No, he's not, nor should he.
And we're not taking nothing away. Listen, we're not taking nothing away. We're not taking nothing away from Floyd.
Nobody is saying.
He's 42 years old.
Excuse me, I'm not sitting up there and saying what the brother should do. I'm saying, what are y'all trying to say that Floyd Mayweather scared?
Now you see what happened as soon as they mentioned Floyd Mayweather's name, everybody got so excited and roused up. They've spoken about Terrence Crawford. They've spoken about Errol Spence. They've spoken about Manny Pacquiao. Everybody was just chill. As soon as they mentioned Floyd, it's like his name has power. Everybody's all amped up now.
Come back and fight.
We're not saying scared, we're saying smart. Like you.
Would you want Pacquiao or Mayweather?
I'd take Pacquiao.
Why?
Because I always wanted to fight him.
Okay.
You know, and I felt like he ran.
Okay.
He also wants Pacquiao because he does not want to be that fighter to put that quote-unquote one loss on Mayweather's record or on his resume. I remember Adrian Broner also put forth a sentiment like that, even though we know Adrian Broner was not going to beat Floyd back in 2013 when he made that statement. But a lot of these younger black fighters, they understand that Floyd gave them the blueprint to understand the game at a higher level. So, I mean, of course, they would fight them if the fight was offered, and they might play around and claim that they want to fight Floyd, but they don't really want to fight Floyd.
Hey.
I asked a direct question.
Hey.
Are you saying Manny Pacquiao ran from you?
That fight was available. They were the same promoter, and it didn't happen.
But you his manager, you his promoter, you come, he can answer the question.
I recall the era.
Right, but you know what? I don't think that Manny is necessarily or was necessarily scared of Terrence Crawford. I just think that his management team did not like that fight for him. And I also believe that Manny had his sights set on Floyd Mayweather. That's why he decided to leave Top Rank in the first place. I think that if that fight were offered to Manny and he could make big money fighting a Terrence Crawford, he would get in the ring and fight a Terrence Crawford. And Terrence will quickly find out that he might think that it's easy. And I would pick Terrence to win that fight. But Manny would definitely get his licks in, no doubt about it. And early in the fight, Terrence would say, wow, this guy hits a lot harder than I thought he hits.
He's the best in the world. I want to know from him.
So if you think about it, he fought Algieri.
Okay.
Ruslan Provodnikov.
Okay.
Did he really fight Provodnikov? I don't remember Manny Pacquiao fighting Provodnikov. I know that he fought Matisse. Maybe the brother means Manny fought Brandon Rios as opposed to fighting him. But if you're Manny Pacquiao and you're still on the comeback trail and you're trying to build yourself back up, why the hell would you get in the ring with a Terrence Crawford? That would make no sense whatsoever. People forget Manny Pacquiao's career in the last 7 years, since he defeated, since he got robbed against Tim Bradley, has had a lot of ups and downs. He got jobbed against Tim Bradley, and then he was able to win a couple of fights after that. Then he got detonated by Juan Manuel Marquez. Then I think he won a couple of fights after that. Then he lost to Floyd Mayweather, and then won a couple of fights after that, and then lost to Jeff Horn. So, I mean, Manny Pacquiao's career really has not had the room to fight someone as dangerous as a Terrence Crawford. So I have no problem with people saying that Manny ran from Terrence Crawford because his team probably understood that Terrence would not be the best fighter for him, especially if they were trying to maximize or optimize his earning potential at the end of his career. But I'm pretty sure that Manny would have fought Terrence Crawford if they brought his name up. But that's why you have management.
Tim Bradley, and that was it.
Right. Okay. I got you.
He fought somebody else when he had the opportunity to fight me, and he didn't want to fight me.
And then he just fought Thurman, which was tremendous.
We're running out of time,
that he could pull off that upset at his age.
Once again, in my view, the Keith Thurman victory is right there with the Miguel Cotto victory as the best that I've ever seen of Pacquiao's career. And I understand that Keith Thurman was still kind of on the comeback trail, but once again, for him to get into the ring with a welterweight who's in his prime, strong, powerful like that, and sustain that, and of course people are going to say Manny was on something. Well, if Manny was on something, that means that Keith and his team were negligent. Because if they entered the fight and said, we don't want any type of fully random blood testing, and Keith agreed to that, I have to assume that Keith is on something as well.
We're running out of time. Good luck Saturday night. I hope Spence makes a recovery because Arum and Heyman seem to be doing some business.
Terrence Crawford is not going to need any luck whatsoever this Saturday night, unless Mean Machine ends up being meaner than I thought.
With Fury and Wilder, and that's the fight boxing really wants to see more than any other.
I'm predicting if Errol Spence is healthy, Errol Spence and you in 2020, I think Floyd Money Mayweather and you in 2021.
So in other words, you think that Floyd Mayweather at 147 years old is going to fight Terrence Crawford? Good luck with that one.
Saying it. That's what I'm saying.
Molly.
That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Yo.
Stephen A., shut your ass up. But anyway, we'll see how things go with Terrence Bud Crawford. It's no disrespect. I think that the brother's phenomenal as a fighter. But until he gets in the ring with the top guys in the 147-pound weight class and stops bullshitting, number one, he made a terrible business decision a couple of years ago when he re-signed with Top Rank. And that makes me truly doubt how sincere he is at wanting to get into the ring with these top fighters in the 147-pound weight class. If you know where the varsity practices, you have to understand you have to go to the varsity practice to get on a team. If you don't go to the gym where the varsity practices, that means what? You want to stay with the JV. That's how I look at it. But anyway, peace.